And we're back for another episode of Where Heartbreak Feels Good. This time around, this is part two of our mini series, breaking down everything that went down on The Last of Us. We're breaking down episodes 4 through 6. So, with that out of the way, let's get into it with George T. Woodbury's intro.
Close your eyes. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
It never gets old, Evan. Never gets old. And again, now that you know, joining me today is Evan Harris from My Cup of Tea.
Hey, glad to be back. Yeah, great intro. Love that intro. So much to dive into. It's funny watching those Last of Us Part 2 scenes. I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of just yesterday's episode, but the previous episodes as well, in terms of thematically and even like physically, a lot of the Easter eggs for the future of
Foreshadowing.
Ellie. Foreshadowing, exactly. So a lot of great stuff to dive into. But yeah, it's been a couple weeks since we last did our episodes. Where we last left off, we were with Bill and Frank in a heartbreaking, internet-breaking episode. And now we're all the way in Jackson, and there's lots of stuff to get into. A lot more pain to get through, a lot more bonding between Joel and Ellie. It's been great so far.
Yeah, I feel like out of this like set of 3 episodes, I feel like 4 is probably like the not least eventful, but like I feel like the main ones are like 5 and 6. Those like that's where the meat is in this episode.
For sure, yeah. The meat is definitely in 5 and 6. That's where a lot of the climactic stuff happened. Yesterday we got some great stuff, and it's funny because episode 5 is pretty much action based, with some great emotional action as well. But then episode 6, yesterday's episode, barely even any fighting. We get like a 30-second fight scene, pardon me, at the very end, and that was pretty much like the only kind of like action. There wasn't that much action in episode 4 and 6, but there's still a lot of great development for Joel and Ellie, so it's very exciting.
Yeah, like episode 4 in many ways is like the setup for all the payoff that we see in episode 5. It's like introducing Kathleen, that's her name, right? The leader of the
Kathleen, played by the great Melanie Linsky from
she's so great
from everything. Yeah,
I was listening to like the official Last of Us podcast, and the way that they describe her as like a super nice, like almost like elementary teacher, but like put her like in charge of like a group in the apocalyptic setting. Like it's exactly that. Like that's exactly how she comes across. Like she's like talks like she's like being nice, but she's really not, and it's just very, very entertaining to watch.
It's very weird. Yeah, I want to know like what was her job before the outbreak. But even then with her, she had some great scenes. She was a great original character to add to the show.
Original character to him.
Yeah. She was not in the video games at all.
It really does put like a face to that group that you fight in the video games. Like it's not just like mindless people that you're just supposed to kill. Like you're actually kind of like engaged in her own little story, even though you shouldn't necessarily root for her, but at least you understand her like motivations.
Yeah, for sure. Probably. Yeah, for sure. Like in the game, it's Pittsburgh instead of Kansas City, and when you get there, it's just like you see hunters have basically taken over the area, similar to what happens in Kansas City, where the hunters have taken over and defeated Fedra. In this case, you see like hanged Fedra soldiers. You realize that the hunters have taken over, but there's no really face to them. They're just bad people who own a truck and they try to kill you and Sam and Henry, and they're just bad. But in this case, we get to learn more about why they changed, why their leader Kathleen is the way she is, her personal vendetta with Henry and Sam, which in the game, Henry and Sam were just running away. By giving her a face, by giving her like emotional, sympathetic motivations, because I was really with her. She had a fantastic scene in episode 5 where she's talking with Perry about like her brother and what he meant to her, and I'm like, oh wow, this is straight up a parallel for Ellie and Joel in the future, and just the lengths people will go for love, and which is one of the main core themes of the show. So she got a lot of great depth that I really thought added to what Joel and Ellie were going through at this point in their relationship.
Yeah, that's one of the many like gifts of the show is like, and they talk about it a lot in the podcast and the after the show episodes or whatever.
Which is just great, by the way. Troy's
yeah, like the whole idea of like when they were making the first video game, like Neil, like they didn't know where they were going, but for this adaptation they know where they're going, and they have an opportunity to make the story like richer. And the idea of introducing a character like Kathleen that essentially, and again we're going to be discussing spoilers for both the video games part 1 and part 2, she's like almost like, I don't want to say exactly a mirror image, but she's almost kind of like a metaphor for what Ellie becomes like in part 2. Like she's like only like driven by like, this idea of revenge of what happened to like her father figure and all of that stuff. Like it's exactly what's happening here with Kathleen, only she has like an entire army and it's about her brother, not like parental figure.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Let's dive into that because full spoilers, of course, as we always say. In Last of Us Part 2, Ellie is like stricken by grief, and the main game is about like how does one handle grief, how does one handle like loss and love, and Ellie goes through a lot of emotional damage, to say the least, in Last of Us Part 2, and that's why I love Last of Us Part 2 because it's a much more introspective game than the first. The first one is, of course, is masterful in its writing, but 2 kind of dives deep into it through a lot of different perspectives and characters. And Ellie is pretty much like what Kathleen is going through here, where in terms of like I have to kill you in terms of Abby. In this instance, Kathleen is Ellie and Abby is Henry in a way, where it's like you killed somebody I loved. I might understand why you did it. In this case, Henry was saving for Sam. Ellie understood that Joel did some bad things to Abby's father, but in both cases, they're like, I do not care. Like, I have to.
It's more about like the person that I love matters more than the person that you love kind of scenario.
Basically. And again, it's a thing where 2 things, like where Ellie is like, she knows that what she's doing is wrong, but in her chest, like she can't get it out. She's panicking. There's that scene where she goes back home to the sheep and she has a panic attack, similar to what Joel does in episode 6. But she has a panic attack because she can't get over the grief, and then she's thinking like she's still like Abby's still out there at the end of the game. And then it's the same way in episode 5 where she's Kathleen's talking to Perry, and she's not having a panic attack, but she's just realizing that like I can't get over it. I just can't get over it. Like my brother meant so much to me. He was like my shining light to me, and I can't get over it, Perry. That's basically what she's telling Perry there. And also in both cases, whether it's Kathleen's brother, which I think his name was Michael, I forget his name right now, and Ellie and Joel, in both those cases, the people that died, that moved on, that passed away, they both are trying to tell the people that are alive, Kathleen and Ellie, that hey, the path that you're going down is not the right path, right? Like Kathleen literally admits to Perry that like my brother, when he was in jail about to die, he was saying, forgive Henry, forgive, it's okay, move on, basically. And Kathleen's like, I know what my brother would want me to do is not what
I don't care.
I don't care. Like I'm on my path of revenge, and I'm one track minded. And she's not saying this, I'm whatever, but it's like that's what she's feeling, and she understands what she's going through, and she does not care what her brother might think. And same thing for Ellie, where she realizes a bit at the very end, at the last hour, at the last minute, that Joel does not want Ellie to go through with killing Abby, or Joel wouldn't want Ellie to go through with killing Abby. It's like my favorite scene in the entire series, when she's like choking Abby in the water and she sees her own reflection, and then you cut back to Joel and his guitar. It's like Joel just wanted you to have a great life. And there's so many meanings you can go to that last scene in Last of Us Part 2. But either way, the core thing is like Joel wouldn't want me to do this. And that's why, that's one of the many reasons that Ellie lets go of Abby at the end there. But yeah, it's just, it was so powerful seeing a character like Kathleen and just seeing the hunters get a face to themselves. And you understood why they took over Fedra in terms of like what Fedra did, all these bad things. We didn't see a lot of bad things. We just heard about it. But whether it's from Henry, Sam, Perry, Kathleen, other people, they were like, Fedra did a lot of bad things to us. But on the other hand, coming from Henry and Sam, you realize the people that took over, Kathleen and them, while they have sympathetic motivations, they did a lot of bad things too, which is the beauty of the show, because they ended up being worse than Fedra, maybe not as worse, but you never really know. Either way, they did some bad things, and that's the beauty of the show. There are good people, there are bad people. I mean to say there's no good, there's no bad. Everybody just doing things, and they think they're their own heroes, their own story, or they think they're just bad people. Or again, nobody has. It's hard to explain, but nobody has like the right definition. Like even Henry was saying, like, I'm a bad person, Joel. Tell me I'm a bad person. But Joel can't, because Joel's done a lot of bad things too. Nobody's bad, nobody's good. There's all just a lot of gray in the middle. I mean, eventually you meet some pretty bad people. I think we're going to meet some pretty bad people here.
Probably penultimate episode.
Yeah, episode 8, we're going to meet some pretty bad people. So I'm curious to see if the show. I'm like trying to give spoilers, but this is a spoiler podcast. But yeah, so we meet David, and David's a pretty bad person. David's group is pretty bad people. So I'm very curious. But even in the game, like David didn't seem like he just automatically wanted to kill Ellie. David wanted to keep Ellie alive, and there was his crew saying, "No, we got to kill her." And David risked everything to keep Ellie alive until Ellie gave him like no other options. So I'm very curious to see how Craig adapts David, because there is a humanity to him they can dive into, of course. But David's pretty bad, and his group is probably even worse than him.
I've been playing through the game. I finally got the remake, the PS5 remake for the game. Really solid. And I'm playing, like, I was like trying to catch up with the show, so I finally got to like, I'm way past the show right now. I'm with David, like running away from them or whatever.
Great level.
After like, great level. But like that entire dynamic is just gonna be very interesting to see, because like I don't know, like the first thing that came to mind was they could really play it off. At least David, like it kind of reminds me of like Mark Rylance, like in Bones and All, like that type of attitude. Like I just want to see that on the screen.
It's basically Mark Rylance and Bones and All, where Mark Rylance, spoilers for Bones and All for the 5 people that fucking saw it. Everybody should go see Bones and All. Okay, I'll try not to spoil it, but like Bones and All and this character, Mark Rylance, like he's a character
very creepy.
He's plain and simple. He's a creepy character. You don't know if he's good or bad. I'll just keep it at that. And David's pretty much like that. Like where you meet him, you're like, oh, this guy is sus, because he's a character that's not Joel. He's a grown man. He just it's very weird. It's a weird dynamic off the bat. So you're like Ellie. You learn not to trust people in this world. So it's very weird. But then David does some good things. He helps you. He doesn't help you. So it's like. It's a very interesting dynamic, and you're right. I can't wait to see how they do it, because knowing Craig, knowing Neil, they're going to do some different things. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get like David and Ellie running away from a bloater and all these clickers.
Yeah.
What the show tends to do is like bring it down a little bit.
Yeah, more personal, more intimate, more character driven.
Exactly. So I'm very curious to see what they do with that. But going back though, episodes 4 through 6. I think the key part that we have to talk about here is episodes 1 through 3 were all about Joel and Ellie meeting and really getting to know each other. We talked about the iconic moment when Ellie was activated. I've always loved that phrase. In episode 1, she liked that Joel was protecting her, blah, blah, blah. Episode 2, we lose Tess. Episode 3, we see the death of Bill and Frank, but from Ellie's perspective, she realizes she's just still getting over the grief of Tess and telling Joel that, like, you can't blame her. You can't blame me for what happened to Tess. They're just going through that big Tess ghost in the room hurdle. episodes 4 through 6 though have really shown the peak or the rising, kind of like when you're writing a book, right? The rising tension.
Yeah.
It's like the rising closeness that is happening between Joel and Ellie, and then episode 6 is that peak.
Yeah, it kind of begins with like the whole Ellie saving Joel's life, which is a very big aspect, like towards episode 6, which I don't remember that being that big of a deal in the game, of him like getting old and like not really believing that he can like protect her or whatever, like in the video game.
Yeah. So this was totally different, right?
Yeah.
Talking about episode 6 and 4 here. In episode 6, Joel was saying like, I'm weak, I can't hear him out of my left ear, I'm growing old. That was very interesting because last night I was like, I paused it halfway through and I'm like, this is very interesting, different, more personal and vulnerable take on Joel. Because in the game, he comes to Jackson and he's just like, Tommy, you owe me one, you got to get Ellie off my hands. This is not my mission. I'm getting close. Basically what he's saying internally is like, I'm getting close to her, given the event of what happened with Henry and Sam and the Pittsburgh level. And I need to separate myself from her. I can't risk that pain again. In the show, we get the same thematic tension, but they're adding a lot of vulnerabilities to Joel, where in this case, instead of saying, hey, Tommy, you owe me one, here's Ellie, take her off my hands. In this case, he's admitting, like, he's verbally saying, like,
almost like he's a failure. Like he's been constantly failing. He doesn't want to fail her again, like he felt like Sarah.
Yeah, exactly. He's having these insecurities, these fears of Sarah, of getting too close. And given what happened in episode 5, he doesn't want to have what happened to Henry and Sam happen to him. Two things here. It's like he doesn't want to be close enough to Henry, or close enough to Ellie, so that when he loses Ellie, possibly, he won't be able to take it. Just like how Henry wasn't able to take the death of Sam. But also, number 2, he's feeling like insecure. Like maybe he won't be able to just protect her in the first place, which is just such a great, vulnerable, insecure side of Joel that we don't see in the game. Again, in the game, Joel has a different mindset entirely when coming to Jackson. Like in this case, he's coming to Jackson just to say like, hey, where are the Fireflies? I need to go there. And then it's him saying like, okay, I'm too weak. I can't take it. Hey, Tommy, please take her off my hands. Because in the game, he's just like, hey, get off my hands. And you'd be better off with them. It's a lot more, how should I say? Surprisingly, it's a lot more subtle in the game because they do a lot of these things via action. Because in the game, he's not telling us anything what's going on internally.
Because we're constantly being like distracted by gameplay, which is not the case here in the show. Like we're actually being able to explore like the character's emotions.
Exactly, which what Troy mentioned in the podcast, where it's like Joel was talking to Tommy saying, you owe me. I'm your big brother. You owe me. We did a lot of things. And then the people attack the dam. So you're like, conversation later. And then you see the way Joel is like saves Ellie after that action sequence. And Tommy's like, oh, I see how Joel's with Ellie. I'll take her off your hands, Joel. And then that's when Ellie runs away because she sees like, oh, I see what's going on. In this case, we see Joel like verbally telling Henry or Tommy his insecurities, and Ellie listens in. And then she kind of like runs away back to their home. But again, just like a lot less action scenes. And as Craig and Neil talked about, it's a lot more emotional action. There's great stuff between like Ellie and Maria and Ellie and Joel with the iconic, my favorite scene from the game. We get the everyone a fucking step for you. It's great.
Iconic
scene.
Real quick,
yeah.
Real quick though, kind of a separate side note question. Like just watching Pedro in this episode 6, episode 5 and 6 and 4 even, but particularly 6, he is like delivering so much nuance to like Joel, and like that scene between him and Tommy is just like heartbreaking. Who do you have for an Emmy, Pedro or Patty Considine?
I have Pedro. I think Patty was going to get nominated as Best Supporting Actor instead of Best Lead Actor. We'll have to see. But apparently, on a deeper side note, like Patty's not getting that many nominations for some reason. Patty is not coming through during award. House of the Dragon is not coming through on actor level at all during award season, except for
Emma
Adoma
Darcy.
Rhaenyra, Emma Darcy. Emma Darcy is like pretty much the consistent nomination through Golden Globes, through Emmy predictions. There was something prior to Golden Globes that happened. I think it was TCAs as well last year. It was just like Emma Darcy. Maybe you got some Matt Smith stuff happening, but it's like, what happened to all the House of the Dragon
I know, right?
nominees? Like, people watching, go back to our House of the Dragon podcast that we did during the season, because we kept talking about how Matt Smith, Patty, Olivia Cook, Emma Darcy are guaranteed nominations, but now a couple months later,
it's only Emma.
It's only Emma. And as the year goes on and the TV starts to stack up until this September, the Emmy season's so weird. But
yeah, I never got September,
it. When Succession season 4 is happening, it's like, oh, there's no option. There's no chance that the Emmy voters are going to choose Matt Smith or Patty over like another Matthew McFadden or you know what I mean, the men of Succession.
Yeah, HBO will probably just be competing with itself in those categories.
Oh, definitely.
Which is cool for them, but...
definitely. It's like, hey, we keep on winning with the best channel streaming service ever. But going back to your question, Pedro has that not new blood, but just like that new nominee to him. Very similar to how Sterling K. Brown on the first season of This Is Us, people are like, oh, man, this is a new face in Hollywood. We got to give it to Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K. Brown won an Emmy for that very first season of This Is Us. So the Emmys do kind of give it to their first season. And even though Pedro has been in Hollywood for plenty of years, like, you know, Game of Thrones season 4, whenever he was introduced, the new character, the new series of The Last of Us is such a monumental season. It's doing more numbers than House of the Dragon, apparently, at this point. I think Pedro could give Brian Cox and I'm forgetting the actor's name, Kendall from Succession.
Jeremy Strong.
Jeremy Strong. He can give those two who have been going like back and forth winning awards. He can give them a run for their money. I forget who won the last year's Emmy for Best Lead Actor. I think it was Brian Cox. But like he can give them a run for their money. I think Pedro is doing some great stuff. And then of course Bella Ramsey's also going to get nominated as well in Best Lead Actress. No question. But yeah, you're right. This show has just been on another level in terms of the Emmys. I can't wait. But yeah, going back to episode 4 though, like during that rising tension, when Ellie saves Joel in that scene in the gas station, great acting sequence by the way, where I love how the show is giving it to us via Ellie's eyes as much as through Joel's eyes. Like Joel's firing, we see Ellie looking at Joel, looking at the enemy, looking at the crack in the wall, really like.
And also, in a sense, we're getting like a third perspective from the last guy that appears, like behind Joel. Like his entire scene where he's like crying about his mother. That entire scene, like it's right.
That scene was heartbreaking, dude. He tells us his name, or first of all, like he tries to attack Joel. He's a younger dude, and he kind of gets the better hand of Joel until Ellie like shoots him in the back, basically like paralyzing him. It looks like, and he can't move. He tells us his name, says, "Hey, we can trade." Gives Joel a knife. It keeps on stretching, and I was shocked. I'm like, in the game, this guy would have been dead. But Ellie and Joel are letting this guy talk, and Joel just knows, like, hey, I'm gonna use your knife. Thank you very much for your knife, but you gotta go. And he kills the guy, and we don't see it on screen. Again, we're through Ellie's perspective, so we see Ellie go back behind that crack in the wall, and she's like breathing super hard and nervously, and
almost getting like a panic attack, similarly to Joel in the next episode.
Great point. I didn't even connect that, but yeah, she's having like a panic attack, and it's two things. Like she's nervous about the kill of itself. She's very like afraid of what she just did, but also she's trying to cover it up because she wants to be as strong as Joel was when he was protecting her. Like he wants to show her that she's strong and she can contribute to this relationship. And it's kind of hard because they're both taking in this violence through awkward means, right? Where it's like they don't even talk about it right afterwards. Just like, oh, okay, come on, Ellie, let's move on.
It's a great contrast because you can see like Ellie, like there's still a child inside of her, but she's
Yeah,
trying to like almost like kill that child in order to survive and be like that daughter figure to Joel. And
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's that like just like Joel doesn't have like a record. He wouldn't like think twice about it. He would just like he just did it and did it. But her, like there's that humanity still like in her, and I'm very curious how that humanity is going to practically eventually like die out when once we get to the next two seasons, if it's two seasons.
That's a great point. Now you're gonna have me go on another tangent. But it's like there's always been that discussion in the Last of Us community. Is like maybe this was answered point blank by Neil and Bruce Stanley in the first game, but it's like did Joel have a negative effect on Ellie, or was Ellie always like this? It's one of those nature versus nurture things where I think, yeah, via Joel, she's definitely becoming more aggressive via their encounters, via what they're going on and what Joel is as a human being. But also, it's like there was a part of Ellie, as we learn in Left Behind, as we learn when she's alone, in these areas outside of Joel, that she was still a pretty violent, no nonsense person. I mean, of course, she didn't come out of the womb super violent, but she's always had that sass to her. So people are always asking, like, did Joel have a negative effect on Ellie? And Ellie had a positive effect on Joel, so much so that Joel became more trusting, more connected with his emotions on a fatherly role. So much so that in part 2, he doesn't automatically let Abby die. He actually saves Abby. So it's like, and now in people, Troy Neil admit in part 2, it's like Joel has become so not complacent, but yeah, I would say complacent in a way, comfortable due to Ellie, due to being a father, due to the comfortableness of Jackson, that he's able to like give Ellie or give Abby his hand and not just like years ago he'd just been like she's on her own.
Yeah.
But yeah, through Ellie he kind of changed, and I guess Joel was also imprinting on Ellie in a way in terms of like her becoming more violent and her thinking that she needs to discard some of her own emotional and childlike wonder in exchange for being more hardened with survival, which does have a negative effect on her in part 2 in terms of how she processes that loss. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and I know already that Craig is trying to deal with these things, which makes the show so good. Like Craig is already in the first 6 episodes dealing with how Joel and Ellie are both processing loss, how they're both processing their relationship, as we see in episode 6,
and how they process even like fear, because like how he mentions it like in the after the episode is like there can be fear in a world like this if you don't have somebody that you care about. Once you have somebody you care about, that's when the fear kicks in.
That's when the fear kicks in. And like Craig he's spitting because that's exactly what people talk about for part 2. It's like that fear of losing somebody, that fear of potentially losing somebody. People don't know how to handle it. And yeah, it's magical. Like Craig and you are already thinking about these part 2 things. And that's the beauty of this TV show. It's coming out a decade past the first game. So they have so many ideas and so many themes they can just add to the show via a character's expression, via just a look or a certain line of dialogue that's just going to tee up what their emotional path is going to be on in the future. It's so interesting.
Yeah. I think we're kind of cover everything in episode 4, at least the main important parts, unless you want to talk about the book jokes.
I'm upset about the joke book because like we talked about like how they're bonding through violence, and Joel and Ellie after that scene in the gas station, they bond through violence a little bit in terms of decompressing, where Joel is like, hey, we're going to get through this. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Oh yeah, that reminds me. I want to talk about real quick how Joel in the game, I was kind of taken aback in episode 4 because in the game, when Ellie saves Joel after the elevator sequence, he's getting drowned in the water. Ellie, the first time, saves Joel, similar to how she saves Joel in this episode. But Joel is pissed in the game. He was like, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have come up here. I told you to stay at the bottom level. Not the bottom level. I told you to stay where you were at the hotel. I didn't tell you to come down here. And then Ellie, for the rest of that little mini level, is kind of upset with Joel for basically lashing out at her and not thanking her for saving his life. And then he finally kind of says, like, he never says I was in the wrong, but he just says, hey, here's a sniper rifle during this plaza scene. I'm gonna need you to protect my life, and then that's how they kind of bond through the action set piece of the game.
Yeah.
Well, however, in the show, it's a lot more quicker, and I was kind of nervous. I was like, are they rushing through this Ellie and Joel development here? But no, I kind of like we kept saying in the podcast so far. Craig and the show are really dwindling things down, but keeping it much more personal and emotional. Because there's a scene when they're talking, and Joel's like, "So about what happened, I'm sorry." He doesn't know what to say. I don't even know if he says I'm sorry. And then Ellie's like, "Kind of bad at this, aren't you?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm kind of bad at this." And then they kind of talk about it a little bit, and then Joel kind of tells her how to use a gun. He's like, "Who taught you that?" They're like Vedra, and he's like, "Oh, obviously."
He's like trying to bond with her the only way that he knows, through violence. But with that out of the way, here is our co-host, Josh Woodward.
Oh, what's up, Joshi? Hello.
What's up?
How's it
We're
going?
back.
We are.
I'm sorry I was a bit late. I was kind of obsessing over that Ariane DeBose BAFTA video and why it exists.
I woke up today and people were like spreading this Ariane DeBose. I was like, I did not know about this until this.
It's not great, Bob.
I've been refusing to watch this. I've only seen like 2 seconds of it. I'm like, nope.
I'm just awkward about bad people rapping in the first place. Like, it's one of my societal pet peeves. Don't try to rap if you can't rap. I don't know Ariane DeBose. She's a great singer, so maybe she can rap.
She's very talented, but I'm sure they did not give her the best that they could have given her.
Oh,
it was not great.
Supposedly she's the one who came up with it in her crew. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently, but I don't know.
I think you just gotta know your audience. You're at the BAFTAs. Why you're at the BAFTAs? Like one of the whitest audiences. Like, come on, stop it. That's a weird thing. But maybe it was a swing. I'm happy that she tried it. I love her. She's great. So, yeah. Josh, we were just talking about how Ellie was such a Ellie and Joel were kind of processing them that first scuffle.
Before we get into it, I just want to show you something.
Do you have the video?
I do have the video.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no. This is... Why are you doing this to us?
Why are you making me watch this?
Wait. Okay, wait a second.
You talking about the Punisher?
Because I forgot it doesn't have sound. Okay, keep talking. I'll bring it up later.
Please do.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Come on the podcast talking about the BAFTAs. That's how we do it, baby. But yeah, like Joel is telling Ellie basically what Edgar said, like teaching her, processing their emotions through the only way that he knows how.
Bonding with her,
Bonding with her. But then, like I mentioned, the other way they bond is through the joke book, which I thought was very funny and great. It's literally right out of the game. Some of the dialogue is pitch perfect from what happened in the game. And what I love is a parallel. To cut things short here with the joke book, at the beginning of the episode, Joel's trying to sleep.
I'm sorry, what episode is this on?
Episode 4.
4.
Okay.
With the joke book, when Ellie kind of wakes up Joel, it's like, "Hey, Joel, here's a joke. You want to hear it?" In the beginning of episode 4, he kind of like scuffs it off. But then, like as they're telling jokes throughout the episode, they're bonding a little bit. By the end of the episode, after like the violent actions, Joel first he asked Ellie before she goes to bed, and he's like, "Do you want to talk about what happened?" Or because she mentioned like this wasn't the first person that I killed, so Joel's kind of curious about that. He brings it up again at the end of the episode, and he's like, "I don't really want to talk about it." And that was the first instance of Joel kind of like proactively asking Ellie about her life,
being like a dad,
right? Because Ellie, God forbid, she's asked Joel so many times, and he's kind of like said no. But then this is Joel basically asking Ellie, so it's a really cool reversal evolution of their relationship. But then also on top of that, after that scene, Ellie then like wakes up Joel, and Ellie wakes up Joel and then tells him a joke, and then he starts laughing. Like it's the first time he starts to smile and laugh about her jokes, and then they're just bonding. So that was a really cool bonding moment. Episode 4. Episode 4 was pretty much about them bonding and growing stronger. Before that bond is like hurt badly by what happened with Henry and Sam, in a sense.
Do you want to add anything, George, before we move on to episode 5?
I keep talking. I'll add stuff later. I'm busy doing something right now.
But in episode 5, we finally meet, or at the end of episode 4, basically, we meet Henry and Sam because Joel's sleeping on his deaf ear. Again, the show is really diving into how Joel's old and failing in a sense. This is something he like kind of brings up in episode 6 when talking to Tommy. It's like Henry and Sam, they could have easily been bad. Flip of a coin, they could have been bad, and Joel and Ellie would have been dead, basically. They got lucky. Same thing happened in episode 6 when he's falling asleep outside the cave. It's like he's getting lucky, and that's why he feels more vulnerable and guilty in episode 6. But anyways, we meet Henry and Sam, and Henry, I forget the actors' names for both of them. I think one of them's Lamar Johnson. I think that's
Lamar Johnson is Henry, I believe. Then Sam is
starts with a K, right? It's like something. Either way, while somebody looks it up, they're great,
fantastic
as Henry and Sam, and I love
Kevin Woodard.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Kevin Woodard. I think.
Yeah.
And what a great change to make Sam deaf. Like, it's such an interesting change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting change because it makes him like rely on Henry even more, like the writer said, like after the episode. But like that entire dynamic, like I really do believe like this storyline plays out better here in the show than it does in the game, because like not like the thing about Henry and Sam is like there are characters that you encounter in the video game, and they really do feel like not only as a metaphor, but like they also just like they're there to move, like keep moving like the plot forward, and they're here in the show to do the same thing. But like the fact that we actually get to spend time with them before like the two groups come together, like Joel, Ellie, and Sam and Henry, it's great.
It's great, and I keep talking about this with great TV shows. Take us away from our protagonists. Like there are certain stories that it's necessary to stick with one character, but I always love it when shows give us time away from our protagonists. Episode 5, which was I think it still is my favorite episode of the season so far. It's just so good.
I think
episode 6 is good. Every episode, I'm like, this is my favorite episode.
6 and 3.
6 and 3.
I love 3 and 6.
We'll get to it, but just the little details and nods to future
was amazing. Yeah.
What's coming? Like that's just like, oh, I love that shit.
3 and 5 are great, but then 6, I just watched it again. I'm just like, oh, they do my favorite scenes in the game justice, and I'm like, I'm speechless. But episode 5, I just love the Kathleen, Henry, and Sam of it all. I mean, giving us a look at Kansas City breaking down, then giving us a look at like what Henry and Sam are going through in those 10 days prior to meeting Joel and Ellie. We really get to see like the crux of their relationship and how Henry's like a superhero to Sam, Henry's like a superhero to Sam. Sam's fascination with comic books and it's that fantastical world in a world that is so devoid of hope and
wonder.
Wonder at this point in their world. So it was so sweet and endearing. And yeah, like, as Josh said, like him making him deaf was such a different decision, but I liked it because it really makes Henry and Sam, as Craig mentioned in the podcast, more different than than Ellie and Joel. Because in the game, Ellie and Joel, Henry and Sam are supposed to be like their mirrors at this point in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Reflective of each other, and this is like how close Ellie and Joel could be, as close as Henry and Sam were. And in this case, like we just get more of their brotherly relationship. It's so interesting. The whole paint on his face was just so sweet.
That shot and the reflection too, how it mirrors it too. Like it's just
that transition. Yeah,
it also makes them like the two dynamics very differently because you really can tell that both groups have like their own language to like communicate with one another.
Great point. Exactly. Yeah, they both have their own distinct individual language. So yeah, I just love the Henry and Sam of it all. I like going through the sewer level, basically the underground of Kansas City, which is like our version of the sewers. And we get that one image of Ish as like the protector, which is of course straight from the game. Like if you read the notes from the sewer level of the game,
that they added that.
It's so good because like as an average viewer, if you're just watching, you can kind of see how like, oh, this is just a cool little school community. But as a gamer, you look at that one image.
So much more detail from what the notes you find in the game, and like it's
Yeah.
that's like what The Last of Us, like the games, because like there's so much work and thought put into the environmental storytelling, and to see like parts of that come through in the show is really special.
Big time. And Josh and Edgar too, like for part 2, like when they get to the Seraphites and like the goddess of the Seraphites and what their religion is like, that's going to be a lot.
They're gonna crush it.
Craig's just going to go deep into that because these are all stuff that they can't do in the game.
Yeah.
In his Abbey.
Oh, we're definitely getting like full like deep dive into Seraphites. It'd be so good.
I can't wait. Like we get
even the wolves too. Like I did see a full
too.
flashback to like the wolves being formed.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited for all that season 3 stuff right there. But yeah, I'm curious, or I really liked just the tease that they did in the underground, and through this whole episode, seeing Henry and Joel's relationship as like these two protector figures. Even though Henry admits to Joel, like, even though I never really killed somebody, I feel like I did when I sought out Kathleen's brother. And Josh, Edgar and I already talked in depth about what makes Kathleen such a great character and how she mirrors.
Melanie Linsky really plays it, like really sells it too.
Yeah,
like the calm demeanor, but like being very ruthless and like having that. It's just such a nuanced character and performance.
Yeah, like an elementary school teacher. We were talking.
Yeah,
we were talking about but yeah, the scene between Henry and Pedro, or Henry and Joel, another great performance from Pedro, another great performance from Lamar, where he's just like, tell me I'm a bad person because I sought out her brother to help give medicine for Sam. Because in this world, medicine's too hard to come by. Fedra needed something big and I had to sell out her brother. And at this point, what I love about episode 5 is that I sympathize with both sides. If I'm Henry, I'm doing the exact same thing as what he did to protect Sam. I fully understand it. I'm so sympathetic to what he did. I don't blame him at all for what he did. I empathize with like his whole heartbreaking like feeling that he just is a killer now, even though he's not in a sense. It's so interesting. And he's telling Joel this because he feels like he's like in this morally bad spot. And Joel, somebody who has definitely killed people, some who deserved it, some who didn't, is like Joel can't even answer him when he says like, tell me I'm a bad guy. Because Joel probably internally is thinking, if you're so bad, if you're thinking you're bad, then I'm even worse, basically. But then on the other hand, Kathleen, as we talked about already with Edgar, I totally sympathize with the Kathleen position. If somebody killed my brother for whatever reason, I'm going after them and I'm killing them. Like, I understand completely why Kathleen wanted to kill Henry.
That's why The Last of Us, like both the games and the show, are so special because there's like it plays with morality so well. There's no like good guys, bad guys. It's all middle of the ground. Like you could see both sides of every character and every dynamic,
every decision. You can totally understand. Yeah. Kathleen, though, does go over the deep end when she's like, now we got to kill Sam, too. I'm like, what? I was like,
maybe don't do it a little kid.
Go back a little there. He's a kid. And then all her talk about, like, fate and he was meant to die. I'm like, oh, my God. These are very interesting things in terms of, like, how children are meant to die and, or at least that child is meant to die and children die every day.
Which... Again, spoilers, but I feel like that kind of similar conversation can come back to the finale between Joel and Marlene, in a sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
And lots of stuff in part 2.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even
like we're definitely gonna see that like that touch of morality a lot more in part 2 stuff.
You're right. Oh, definitely. That gives Kathleen basically like, as we mentioned, like what Ellie's going through in part 2 in terms of revenge, processing that. But Edgar, like, you mentioning Marlene, I can't wait for the finale. It's gonna be one of our shorter episodes because I'm pretty sure it's just gonna be.
But like, I love like they structured this episode just how we thought they should, and they really nailed it.
I was going fast forwarding episode 6.
Episode 6, yeah.
I was so nervous prior to this because I'm like, wait, we have to do the dam.
There was so much they had to fit in this episode, but the fact that they like,
it was organic.
So well done.
Yeah, I was like, and they spent the first 20 minutes doing like TV show original stuff here, and I'm like, oh, okay. And they still have time to give us like these quiet moments. It doesn't feel rushed in the slightest. But like
even episode 5 too, like the way that's structured, getting both like the car sequences, getting Pittsburgh, or making Pittsburgh be Kansas City is really an interesting choice, and to have Sam and Henry be based there, and like to still did the residential moments too between
exactly
Ellie and Sam.
Like we get some great suburb moments. Like we get the sewers, the suburbs, the escape from the city, all in this episode, while giving us, as I mentioned, a backstory with Kansas City's downfall, a backstory with Kathleen talking to Perry, a backstory with Henry and Sam. All these original depth defining.
Like they're really pushing these runtimes. Like probably some of the best examples of working with every single second you have. Like I've seen in TV.
It's beautiful. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm so happy about it. But yeah, at the end of episode 5, let's just fast forward to that. Wow. Incredible.
Before that, the sniper scene.
Oh yeah, the sniper
from the game.
The old man.
The game.
The change for the old man, it's so good, and like don't do it, don't do it, and then
kind of wants to out himself in a way, right?
This action sequences in general in the show are like somehow like direct adaptations from the game. Like it's not exactly, because it's not like actual gameplay, but it feels so much like the same gameplay from the games. It's weird.
Them hiding behind the cars, like, okay, I'm going.
Like the tracking shots and like everything about how the way it's shot and like blocked is just like it's perfect.
For sure, like see Joel like sniping and like looking overhead, like it just feels so visceral, like the game. And then like the camera, I love the direction, because like seeing again all through Ellie and Joel's perspective, Ellie on the ground. This perspective we don't get to see in the game because we're just playing as Joel. But Ellie at nighttime on the ground during all these clickers and the bloaters and everything.
The bloater, the way they pulled off the bloater was really good too.
It was great. Just the rising tension is just like just rumbling, and then
the sound effects. Oh my god!
That
slow mo shot. It's like so like corny, but in
I didn't love it. I love it. It was done in post, but yeah,
it was great because like you see Tommy, like, oh, not Tommy, but like Perry, like, oh, like what the heck is happening? And then it's like, boom! It was great. I loved it. It was kind of goofy, but I kind of loved it.
Yeah.
But then, oh my god, can you talk about the little girl clicker? Why?
Oh my god!
Why?
So that remind me of the little girl from Barry.
Oh,
oh yeah, I forgot about.
Oh my god, yeah. They should have got her because she was crazy. But yeah, that was probably more terrifying than the bloater. Just that whole inside the car sequence when she's like bending back. I'm like, okay,
that was terrifying.
Just kill me now. Oh yeah, that's. Oh god, just the imagery of all those fungus on the little girl's face.
On the face.
You
can barely see her mouth.
Yeah, I don't want to see that, fam.
And I really like the whole idea of Kathleen essentially being murdered by a child clicker when she ignored the problem under the sewers, and 2, she's going after a kid. It's kind of like it goes both ways.
Yeah, exactly. It goes both ways. And then, oh my gosh, the episode's not finished because we get a more heartbreaking sequence with Henry and Sam, and
it doesn't feel good.
Trying to save him.
Wow, this broke
what a change! Like that's such a smart change because it starts to set up like, will the cure actually work, or like just having Ellie have that thought, because in the game we don't see her thinking about that much until like we did it past university.
Right, Josh? Like that's the beauty of this game. Craig is thinking ahead so well because Ellie's Ellie's internal burden with being the source of this cure and the ability to save humanity.
They're fleshing it out so much more.
Fleshing it out so much more. And again, I think the game is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And that burden is definitely reflected upon Ellie's just look at the end of the game.
Like we start to see it, that the ending shot of episode 3, like when she's just standing there, like contemplating, holy shit, I might be the the burden of having Tess dying and having like, am I actually the cure to humanity? Like
exactly, it's that burden starts to develop, and then in the game you really see it at the very last level where you're going through like the Utah.
Not university, it's Utah. Like when she is kind of distant from Joel.
She's distant because she's preparing as like is this all worth it? And then Joel was like, here's a decision. Like, we don't have to do. And again, Craig mentioned this on the podcast. It was so funny because in the episode 6 podcast, the scene where Joel kind of gives Ellie a decision.
Yeah.
Even though he knows she's going to say yes. Neil mentions like, this kind of one of two decisions that Joel asked Ellie because Neil was teasing how at the very last episode, Joel's going to ask Ellie another decision.
We know that giraffe scene is going to hit even harder.
It's going to hit harder because he asked her after the giraffe scene, like, do you want to continue doing this? Because we could go back to Jackson right now. And Joel is sincere in that moment, unlike episode 6. He is sincere in this moment where he's like, do you want to go back? And Ellie's kind of grappling with her burden, and she's like, yeah, it can't all be for nothing, Joel. Yeah. Joel's like, okay, let's do this. For her. Because at this point, Joel's hands are free. He's like, I'm doing this for you. And it can't all be for nothing. And that's when it gets all tragic. But I just love how they're already teasing these things. The whole burden, and when she's giving Henry like her blood, she feels like she turns like a little child. She's like biting her nail. She's so nervous. She wants it to work. She says she's going to stay up with him. I'm like, oh my God, this is so different from the game, but wow. Yeah.
And the way how he, like, when she wakes up, he's just sitting on the bed because he's deaf. He can't hear her moving. That's why he's not reacting. Like,
kill me now, man. Kill me now. That was hard.
Then we get almost shot for shot from the game of how it's reenacted, except for like the nuances that Bella brings to when
that little cry at the end.
Himself. Oh my God! Like it's like a lot.
It's a lot.
Bella is crushing it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're doing so good.
She's getting that Emmy nomination for sure. Yeah. And yeah, that's another instance of the game or the show giving it from Ellie's perspective, just lingering on Bella's face when she's like screaming, like it's like it's beautiful and tragic. But also I like the difference because in the game Henry like pointed at Joel just like he does in the show, but he's blaming Joel. He's like, "What did you make me do?" In the show, he's kind of blaming himself. He's like, "What did I do? What did I do?"
Yeah.
And Joel's like, "Give me the gun, Henry." And then it doesn't work out.
And I love how in episode 5, it doesn't cut to black. We see them burying the bodies.
Oh yeah,
another scene. But at the beginning of episode 6, it does cut to black. Like, what a great, like, they show the scene again, and right after he does it, it cuts to black, and does 3 months later, just like in the game.
Oh, I didn't even connect that.
Well, it's such a smart way to do both options.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we see them burying the bodies, and
Ellie kind of is there, right? Like Ellie's the one saying to Joel, like, "Come on, we gotta go," and Joel's the one sitting there looking at the graves, looking at the "I'm sorry" message from Ellie, and
the "I'm sorry" message, like, heartbreak does not feel good.
It's emotional because Joel is really internalizing the fear of like. Again, that's what Henry and Sam are used for in the game and the show, to be that reflective mirror. And Joel's looking at it being like, that's gonna be us. This could be us. Especially this could be us if I fail. If I fail Ellie, just like I failed Tess. If I fail Ellie, if I fall asleep on the wheel again, basically because of my insecurities, because of my age, because of whatever. This could be us. So he's internalizing that and bringing it into his arc in episode 6. And episode 6 it just starts off
before we did episode 6.
Oh yeah.
Let's interrupt with a little commercial break.
What happened? What are you doing? Oh Jesus.
The category is outstanding debut. Charlotte Wells, we love After Sun. Georgia Helene, Blue Jeans, the one. Elena, Maya, the teamwork's grand. Good luck to you, Katie Fran. Electric Holiday, Marie Girl.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. The worst part. The worst part.
Can you fix this zip? Upper ladies in the room.
Whoa.
All here, I presume. Hong Chow, Dolly D. Carrie
Carrie with the C.
Oh
my God!
Michelle, I've loved you from the start. Angela Bassett did the thing. Violet,
oh no! Stop it!
Kate, you're a genius. And Jamie Lee, you are all of us. One of us is here alone.
Of course, the white people are like vibing into this.
Yeah, Donnie's the only
Shut up,
reaction.
I said did the thing. The Angela Bassett part gets me.
It's great. And then Donnie's reaction just like
All their reactions, like great meme content.
great meme content. You can't make this shit up. How have I not heard about that last night or yesterday during the
Right, it just came out this morning. I don't know why. When it was like this time yesterday is when the BAFTAs are going on.
Yeah. Those were quite the winners. For the BAFTAs.
We'll talk about it later, eventually, in another video.
Great segue from Henry's and Sam's death to the bonus rapping.
That's why you come for this podcast, baby. Like
Gotta liven it up again after we got so dark.
This is what Ellie and Joel watched on their way to.
No.
Oh my god! But yeah, we get some great original content here. Meeting
Episode 6.
I forget the guy's name, but apparently he's a very famous actor. The guy in the cabin, with the other girl, with his wife. And again, this is so great. Oh no! Viola's reaction. Not great, Bob. Not great, Bob. But
Nathan Green, you're talking about him.
You said Nathan Green?
Graham
Green. He came in. He was great. I liked it because we get it shot from like his perspective, and you can tell something's off. You know, Joel and Ellie are in the room. The way the way the wife is just sitting there, so chill.
Wife just made him soup.
Just made him scoop. Why didn't you go for the gun?
And I love how they did the Joel's like technique from the dams, or like your answer better be the same as your wives. Like on the map.
Yeah, and they play for comedy because like, did you tell
Yeah.
the truth? Yeah. It's like, are you telling me the truth? Yeah. Like, it's great. It was beautiful. Yeah, straight from the game, but also very original too. And basically, again, touching on that fear that Joel has, saying like, don't go west of the river of death. If your brother's over there, he might be dead. This is fearful because Joel has already talked about like the only reason I move on is because of family. So if Tommy's dead, then again, that's another failure on his book.
His purpose is protecting people, and people that he
Yeah.
cares about dying. Like, he doesn't have any purpose.
That's when his real fear starts to kick in. But also he's fearful of Tommy and then of Ellie too. Like if I take her this way, Ellie could die, and that's a fear that he has, and then a fear that he'll bring up with Tommy later on. I like how Ellie just takes the rabbit too here. That was great. But then real quick, we get that cave scene before they went to Jackson. And again, similar to episode 5, you get the reversal of Ellie telling Joel to like hurry up, let's go. It continues here, where in the cave scene, when Joel wakes up, Ellie is the one taking charge. She has a gun in her hand. She like took the second shift of the night, and Joel's kind of upset, like, "Hey, wake me up if that happens next time." So like, oh man, it's so great. You can tell like he had a pretty big sleep, and Joel kind of brings it up during the scene with Tommy, where he's like, "Whenever I wake up, I feel like I lost something," which is just a great line. So yeah, Joel's going through it a lot mentally in this episode. He's having that panic attack too outside the cabin, where he's like panicking and just having that.
I love that they are giving him panic attacks and like PTSD. Yeah. Like that's such a great aspect to like flesh out more of the Joel and this character.
Yeah, one of my favorite things also about like that aspect too is that they've been using this sound, like this static sound, whenever he like you can tell that he's having like a panic attack or he's having a flashback to like Sarah. Like when we get to like the part with the dog like trying to sniff if they're infected or not, and you can just hear that like static sound again, like his nervousness and all of that stuff is really good.
Yeah, it's great. The sound design in this show is just awesome. Again, it's perfect at internalizing what Joel's going through, something we can't see via the game, or that we do kind of get via the game, via the action, but now that we have the opportunity to look at these actors' faces more so, by having these panic attacks, it really lets the audience really feel what Joel is going through instead of playing what Joel is going through. But yeah, so Ellie's basically like taking charge here, and they almost make it to Jackson, become surrounded. the first introduction to Maria. We get the dog scene, and then Joel again is just like he's paralyzed, and
That dog scene is so good.
the dog scene was just
Like,
so great. It's like
The
I was
tension,
shocked.
then just like have it alleviated with Ellie just petting the dog. Like,
It was beautiful. I was shocked because I'm like, Joel's not doing anything, and I love how the show comments how like Joel didn't.
And it
do
comes back later
he's
on.
frozen. Yeah.
He froze. I'm like, oh wow, this is very unique, very different, very unexpected for Joel. But again, it's because of that fear. He's succumbing to the fear. It was just so good. But to make it to Jackson, and this is wow.
Oh my god.
Wow.
It is
Also,
straight from the fucking game.
straight from the game. Also, real quick,
Easter egg land.
an early Easter egg when they're talking in the cave, and Ellie asks Joel like, "Hey, what do you want to do later on?"
Oh my god, yes.
Joel was like, I kind of want to, like,
An
a
astronaut.
ranch. No. This is a ranch scene where he's like, I want to be
Oh
on a
yeah.
ranch, maybe have some sheep.
And that's what Ellie becomes in part
Ellie
two.
does in part 2.
Ah!
That's craziness. It's crazy. I was watching it like, oh my god, like that's what happens to Ellie.
It's
It's just
fucking
fucking
Ah!
like, it's great. It's a thing. These little things that you can't possibly do in the first game, but now they can definitely do in the show.
yeah.
Also, during that scene, I got the sense that Ellie was kind of, maybe you got it the same way. Like when Ellie asked Joel, like, "What do you want to do after all this? After I, save the world?" I think Ellie's wanting Joel to say, like, "I want to be with you still," right? Like,
yeah, totally.
he's definitely
We're seeing that bond like really become strong now.
Yeah, she's definitely, without even saying a word, you can kind of get the sense that hey,
Like,
she
like
wants.
is in the game, like this sequence, like this episode, the dam, this episode here is like really the moment that cements their bond.
It does, which is why it's so pivotal.
Yeah.
And Ellie's saying like, like she doesn't say like, "Hey, do you want to stick with me?" But you can tell via Ellie's questioning.
She wants him to say that.
She wants him to say that.
Mhm.
It's just so sweet, and it makes it more like heartbreaking in terms of her attachment when they get that scene at the end with at their house.
And later on, where she like says she wants to be an astronaut, like that's flashing out. Well, we'll see later on too. Like,
no, my favorite.
that flashback's gonna hit so much harder.
Exactly, these flashbacks are going to hit so much deeper in terms of.
Will it be a flashback? I'm still interested in how they'll structure out.
Oh wow, part 2
season going forward. Yeah,
part 2 is
are the flashbacks just gonna happen like chronologically, like in season 2? Then we did Seattle in season 3. Because ever since like I think season 2 was officially announced, like it wasn't. It's been before our last episode that didn't happen, so now it is.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Wow. But even Neil, because Neil came out and said like, "Hey, part 2 on like," he said like
it needs to be more than one season.
He said part 2, but then we already knew from Craig months ago when he said if this show was to get another season, or in terms of adapting part 2, he already said like it would have to be multiple seasons. Because part 2,
it's very interesting how they do it, because like maybe that was the plan previously. Now they're to somehow they can't cut it down though. Like with how this season's structured and how much they're fleshing stuff out, that part 2 at least needs to be 2 seasons.
I think so, and
way much bigger of a story.
And I keep telling, yeah, you're right, because people have been asking me this, and I'm like, season 2, episode 1 isn't going to be the death of Joel, guys. Stop.
No,
stop.
I think that's season 3 or like the finale of season 2, possibly.
Exactly, and I think people on 2 perspectives here, right? Like HBO knows eventually, like, yeah, Joel has to go, but
They're not to waste Pedro Pascal.
There's no way. Yeah, there's no way. People are like, oh my gosh, if part 2 is being, because Neil tweeted out part 2 on its way. People are like, oh my gosh, so season 2, episode 1 is going to be crazy. No,
I think they're going to add much more in that time jump, and I don't think it'll be as big of a time jump. I did see it being like 1 or 2 years, but that's enough to give us a full season of stuff before we did the Joel's death ending the season, and we did the Seattle in season 3.
Yeah. Here's a question for both of you. Do you think season 2 part of like we follow like 2 storylines, one of them being Joel and Ellie and the other one being like Abby catching up with them?
Yeah. I could see it being not Abby catching up to them, but I could see them introducing Abby in season 2.
Yeah,
where we see her dad, like actually her dad, the same actor in the hospital scene. like with not the mask. I did totally see them doing that.
I think,
and I did see as we did their relationship progressing in Jatson, we cut to like, because we've been jumping across multiple characters this season. Like it's not, they should definitely do that and jump to like Seattle and Abby and her dad, like Abby, not her dad, but Abby recovering from that trauma. We introduced Abby somehow. I don't know how you would do that, but you could.
Yeah, I trust them to introduce Abby in towards the end of season 2. I think what I've been thinking about is like Ellie's emotional arc in season 2 is going to be what her flashback arc was in part 2, in terms of like Ellie succumbing to like the doubts that she had in Joel. Was he telling me the truth?
But I'd also worried because the way it's structured in part 2 makes it hit even harder.
It does.
Because we get them reconciling right before Abby and Ellie the confrontation at the end. Like, and we did the way it's structured in part 2 is so special. So I'm really interested in how it translates.
You're so right, Josh, because I was just like rethinking about the part 2. It's like when Ellie is like has Abby in that chokehold, you get a quick flashback to Joel and the guitar.
That's one of my favorite moments of part 2 because it's so like brutal.
And then it takes us to go all the way to the last seconds of the game for her to go back to her abandoned house. She sits down. Then
it cuts to the
porch scene, which is probably the best scene in the entire series for me. For me, it's the best scene. And again,
I don't know if it should be as effective if you do that in season 2 before we did everything in part 2.
Chronologically do it. So they have.
I don't know.
They have their hands tied out for them.
I trust them though. I trust Neil. I trust Trey.
It's so hard because people have complained about the narrative structure of part 2. But
I love it.
I
adore it. Yeah.
I like how back and forth it is, both from Abby and Ellie. So
it's so unique too.
It's so unique. It's a lot. It's a lot. So it's going to be hard.
It's be interesting. Yeah.
I think we both agree. Yeah, multiple seasons, 2 and 3.
It has to be. Like even if you just do Ellie's day or Ellie's Seattle journey in one season, then cut to Abby.
Ellie day 2 was like 3. A lot. She does a lot.
Oh yeah.
So like so
like you should even just like have, I don't know, I think it would hit the hardest to have Joel die season 2 finale.
Yeah,
I don't know how you would fill that like time. There's a lot there. You could establish the relationship with Dina.
There's like 9 episodes of like no action. Or I guess they could add like, of course, all these raiders and clickers during their hunting.
But it won't be as interesting. Yeah,
it won't be as interesting. So what do you do for 9 episodes?
I don't know.
They have to add part 2 stuff.
I think they have to do it like a finale because HBO loves their cliffhangers, like that type of like. If not the finale, then the penultimate episode.
The Game of Thrones has nailed the finale surprise death in the middle of a season.
That's true.
Like you can do. What episode did Joffrey die? That was episode like 3 or something like that, 2 or whatever.
Even Succession, I've been watching that recently, and like the stuff they get through in one season is crazy. Like the stuff it's about to be a finale happens at episode 3. So like, they could easily do that.
Great point. Succession. I'm so happy you're on the Succession train.
We'll get to it in the monthly episode, but like, I'm already like almost done with season 3.
That's awesome. I can't wait. It's so mythological and poetic. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to episode 6. The whole area of Jackson's full of Easter eggs. We meet, of course, we saw Maria. But we see like the whole city is thriving. Like Ellie said, she's surprised how well and thriving it is.
And I'm shocked at how it's translated. It is very like it is exact from the games.
They mentioned it on the behind the scenes part at the end of the episode. Like, were these structures already built and they just walked into town?
I think it's a set. I think they built it. This is like it has to be if it's that exact.
Because they mentioned like some stores allowed us like use their shops. Or
maybe like for interior shots.
I think it's
probably
might be half and half.
Probably half.
Could be wrong though.
In general,
I don't know. I don't think Jackson exists like that as it does in the game. So like, because it's the way it's constructed is very much like ripped from the games.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I can't wait to see more to explore.
And the restaurant, like with the lights, oh my god, with that iconic shot from part 2.
Yeah, Oh yeah. Let's talk
Dina!
about it right now.
Dina.
I like how it was trending. Like, was that Dina was trending?
Oh, it's definitely Dina. If you listen to the podcast,
I
Yeah.
thought two things. I thought at first that it wasn't Dina. I thought it was an Easter egg towards Dina.
they all
'cause
but
I-
confirm it. In the
They all but
podcast.
confirmed it. I was like, oh, okay. Like when I listened to the podcast, I was like, I can see what they're doing now. Because I'm like, there's no way they cast Dina. So that's definitely not.
There's rumors that they did.
But
Already.
I feel like after when they get to part 2, they're just gonna recast.
No, it's if you would, she is exactly like Dina.
She
If you,
does
like,
look
zoom
exactly
in.
like Dina. But part of me just feels like
And
maybe
she's the same age as Bella right now.
is she?
supposedly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like maybe they got a shot in there just to like say like, hey,
And
this
I'd
is Dina, but
I'd
we can-
love that they went with unknown for her. That'd be cool.
That'd be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Because it was funny because Neil was like saying basically like that's Dina, and then Craig was more cryptic, being like, well, it's you never really know. I'm like,
The
why is
funniest thing
Craig-
about that is that Troy didn't even realize that was a reference.
Yeah.
that was great. That was amazing. Troy, replay part 2.
And that's probably very traumatic.
yeah, that's hard. You're right. Yeah, it's hard to do that. Yeah, never mind. Don't watch your own work.
Supposedly, Ariana DeBose has deactivated her Twitter account.
No, come on, guys. No,
that's harsh. That's
harsh.
Don't-
What
don't
have they been?
bully.
Yeah, what have they been saying to her? She took a swing. And she missed.
She-
Congratulations on Best Supporting Actress. We'll
She
see
got
her
that
at
asked Oscar though.
we'll see her at the Oscars. Announcing. Wouldn't she be the one announcing Kiki Kwan to win? Right? Isn't Best Supporting Actress announced as the Best Supporting Actor?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We'll see her again in a few weeks. But yeah, so I'm very happy that they got Dina because that's going to be a core relationship in season 2 and season 3. Also, speaking of Dina, speaking of childs, Tommy has a child too. How'd you figure
What?
it out?
That's a change.
That's a change. That's going to make it even more fucking heartbreaking.
Yup.
Because in part 2, oh my gosh, I love Tommy's arc so much. It's so endearing.
But it
'cause-
will probably make it way more effective of him having to leave Maria
Leave
because
and his
he has a
child.
baby. Right, yeah.
Like, he's leaving his home and his child. Like Maria's gonna be even more. She was upset at him in part 2. She almost left him.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah,
she did.
she
leave
probably
him.
did. I
She
think
leave him
I
at
think
the end of
they
part
were
2?
separated.
I think they're separated. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're definitely gonna separate now, especially with this Maria. This Maria is much more. this Maria is much more different. Yeah, I'll be right back. Actually.
Yeah, that works. I think also like
Then-
one of the things that I was thinking about, since we already have an early reference to Dina, do you think we at the very least get a mention of her name, of Abby, in the finale from the doctors?
Huh. I don't know.
At least not an appearance, but at least a mention.
How would they do that?
I mean, since they've been fleshing out like all of these characters, I can see them fleshing out the doctor. So when Joel
Maybe,
does
yeah,
what he
have a
does-
full on conversation like, hey, I have a daughter.
Yeah,
I did see that happen for sure. Like, Evan, we were saying, will they name drop Abby in the finale, or at least will the doctor say like, "Hey, I have a daughter, don't kill me"?
No, not about one.
I don't know.
Nah.
Hey,
I don't see a name drop, but I did see the daughter thing happen.
I can see the daughter thing. It would feel goofy. He's like, I have a daughter. Her name is Abby.
Yeah, don't. The name
Wink,
drop would
wink.
be like, wink, 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 yeah.
And Joel's
not like that, but like the way that I was like selling it to Josh is like the fact that we're getting all of these characters being fleshed out, like
yeah.
the fact that we can see like the doctors, like not a conversation between Joel necessarily,
I don't
but like,
think they have enough time.
well, I mean, look at everything that they put in this episode.
I know, but the finale being the shortest episode, I think will full on be just like the stuff we see from the games. I don't think they'll flesh out that much more.
Granted, the hospital, if you're as good as me and most players,
It is very short. It is very short.
you come in, you throw Molotovs, you kill everybody.
But they also have like the conversation with Marlene. They have like them getting ambushed, or not ambushed, but it was like the subway, right?
Yeah, so like
The water.
knowing the
They
way that this
name-
game or this show runs, like they're on the highway, they're under the highway, they're at the hospital. That's like 20 minutes. So there's like 30 minutes of extra material that you could definitely add to this. Oh, also
maybe I guess you should flush out like the Fireflies there and have more of Marlene's side of what
that's what I'm thinking.
Happening.
Marlene's gonna have a much bigger role.
Maybe Marlene will have a conversation with, "Hey, how's Abby?"
Yeah, like via the
or you should have Abby there, like
not really with Abby, but like because Abby's away at this point. But like
right,
you can have via the tape recorders, as Joel was like, murdering everybody. You collect all these. I think it's like 3 or 4 tape recorders.
You can flush out those and have those.
Marlene's talking to the doctor. Marlene's talking.
Yeah.
That's part 2. But knowing how this show gives us different perspectives, I would not be surprised if we get Marlene and John scenes. John being Abby's father. Like we can have Marlene talking to John prior to the episode even starting. Him being like, you know what we have to do. Cut to Joe and Ellie walking towards the hospital. Like I'm ready for more Marlene scenes. More Marlene just like question. That's something like the games. We shoot Marlene. Like Marlene's looked at in a bad light a little bit at the end of part 1.
The way they're fleshing Marlene out here, like even Joel mentions it in this episode, like she's a lot of things, but she's smart. Like she's not dumb.
And Joel like blames she took my brother away from me, kind of thing. Where it's like Joel does not have a good outlook on Marlene, and in that case, the players, the audience, doesn't have a good outlook on Marlene. But I think Craig would be smart to give us a more not positive
from her side.
More of her side, because even though Marlene has to do what she has to do, and we might not agree with it at all because we love Ellie, we'll get more scenes with it. Maybe we get some Marlene and Ellie's mom scenes. That could definitely happen, right?
When are we seeing those flashbacks? Is that to be left behind?
I'm thinking episode maybe next week. Yeah, I'm thinking next week.
Or could it be with Marlene? Because like I would think Left Behind. That would make the most sense.
Yeah.
It could be that because like, don't we see in the trailer like shots of them like in a high school? We're already seeing flashbacks.
Yeah.
High School Musical with Ellie. Yeah, it's great.
No, that's not. That's not a high school. That's
it's the military.
It's a school.
Military school, basically.
It's still a school.
The Fedra. Yeah.
But
like
rom-com with Ellie.
Because I think in the games, Ellie's mom, I forget her name, Anna. I think right, Anna.
Sure.
It's some 4-letter word. I think she dies before like Ellie's when Ellie's really young, right?
Yeah, very.
And I don't know how maybe Marlene has a conversation with Ellie in this flashback about her mom, and we cut back to it about her mom dying. Maybe because we know Marlene knows her mom.
Yeah, and Ellie doesn't know her mom because remember she asked Marlene, "It's like, are you my mom? Do I look like your mom?"
Yeah.
So yeah, we can definitely get some Marlene and Ellie.
So we know we did at least a shot of Ashley as her mom. So
and also another theorizing for the final chapter, we don't get a lot of Ellie at the end of the game. Like after the giraffe scene, after Joel gets knocked out, Ellie kind of becomes a person that we have to get to. So I can kind of see Craig giving us more of Ellie in the operating table, saying, "Hey, Ellie's going to be all right. Put the mask on," kind of thing. As Joel's making his way up to her, just giving that different perspective. Instead of her just being knocked out and we're carrying her. But yeah, in general though, episode 6, before we close out here, we get that great scene between Joel and Tommy, where Joel is like, basically throughout this episode, he's having these panic attacks, he's worried, but he sees Tommy thriving. And in this case, he feels so weak when he comes to Tommy at night. He's basically pleading for him to take Ellie away from him because he feels like he's not prepared or he's not physically able. Mentally.
That scene is like gut wrenching. Like the work that Pedro does is Emmy. Give him the award. It's
his Emmy clip. That's his Emmy.
It is. Yeah.
Oh, he is. I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, cut 30 seconds right here. Like, this is
like the fact, just as a whole. The way that they're making this Joel more like, I don't want to say softer, but like, I guess I wouldn't say softer, but like not as hardened as the Joel from the games.
He's
gonna make the hospital scene way more effective when he just does fucking bonkers and this like does feral.
Yeah, it was so. I was captivated by it because I'm like, this is something I never saw from Joel. I expected.
I tried.
Of course you did. I've cried once this year, and that was episode 3. Bro, On the Nature of Daylight just plays everywhere, and I get tears. But yeah, it was such a great scene. And same thing for Gabriel Luna as
he is
as Tommy. He was great, just absorbing what Pedro was saying, just absorbing it, looking down, kind of like start from the beginning, like just really. He's in that scene with Joel, and Pedro wouldn't have been able to do that without Gabriel Luna.
This is a breakout for Gabriel Luna for me, because like I know he's been in a lot of stuff like previously, but I haven't seen
Dark
him
Fate.
much.
Come on,
I didn't watch it, but like the work he does here is really impressive, and the fact that he's gonna have even more to do in part 2 or in future seasons.
Oh yeah,
he's gonna be great.
Great stuff to do. Father Tommy, can't wait to see it. But yeah, it's such a great scene, and then we see Ellie looking for Joel, but we don't actually see her spying on him. But during the scene, I'm like, I can definitely see Ellie like spying.
I do want to, before we move on, say the shimmer, a little nod to shimmer.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Of that Ellie's horse in part 2.
Yeah.
Then also the music choices that they're using in the series as a whole, like taking from part 2 music, like the shot or the cue that happens when in part 2 when Joel is riding down the main street in Jackson and the opening the game. That plays when they first arrive at Jackson here, which is really interesting.
Okay, yeah, that was great.
Unbroken, I think is what it's called.
Sure, it's been a while since I've listened to this soundtrack. I can just get like the vibes of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the score was on the next level here. Also with like when they're leaving Jackson as well. It's one of my favorite tracks.
The Path,
Path last night. Yeah, that was one of my favorites, especially because like it starts off so melancholy, but then it gets hopeful. Just like their relationship, like starts off melancholy, but then
that montage is really good too.
Great montage. Oh, we skipped over Ellie first learning about what happened with Sarah too. That was a big moment. Where she's kind of like
Maria having a kid in her past too.
Maria had Kevin. Ellie learns about Sarah. And it was the first time, and her eyes widened, but then she's still protective of Joel. Like, I love how Craig mentioned in the podcast, like that verbal sparring match where she's like dissing on Tommy. Maybe your husband's not as smart as you think he is, or dissing on Maria for not knowing or not trusting Joel and who Joel is. But then she says one of the bigger parts of this series that the more you trust somebody, or only the people that you trust can really betray you. Which really speaks to what we've been talking about, the end of the game where Ellie is lied to by Joel. She is betrayed by Joel. And her arc in season 2 is just her starting to learn about that betrayal. So it's just such an interesting thing for Maria to say. I just love Maria in this episode.
Then we get these scene, like one of the most iconic scenes from the game, is like line for line here, and it's pulled off so masterfully.
So masterfully. Like, there's no way they watched the scene beforehand, right? Because they said they didn't play the game at all. But
it's a different vibe, but like it works.
I'm so happy that they didn't watch it because like it vibes so hard. It works so well,
and they kept the shove too. Like
everybody fucking except for you. It's like you have no idea what loss is. Troy mentioned it on the podcast, but they did remove the "you're treading on some mighty thin ice" there, Randy. I love that line in the game, but I like how quick they didn't kind of work.
It's a different Joel, so they didn't need that line.
I was even mentioning, this is a very different Joel from the game, but it's still contextually who Joel is. So
definitely.
But yeah, it's such a pivotal scene where they're talking and basically him wouldn't separate because he doesn't feel that he's like adequate enough to be there for her, and he's fearful of what would happen if they get too close. But Ellie's fearful what would happen if they separate. So it's that push and pull, literally, of their relationship.
Yeah. Any before we move on to the end of the episode, I know Edgar, you have to go. Any last thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I actually wanted to go back a little bit and talk about that scene between. I think it happens after Joel like leaves the room when Tommy tells him about having a kid, expecting a kid. When he sees like the person that looks exactly like Sarah,
like Sarah,
like close by the tree. And to me, that entire sequence, that little moment, is like the tragedy of like Joel's story and Ellie's, because not only is that something that Joel was never able to have with Sarah, but it is something that he's not gonna be able to really have with Ellie either, and Ellie is not gonna have that either because of her decisions in part two. That's the tragedy of this entire story. That
This
happy
story's a
ending,
tragedy,
everything
yeah.
happened.
God damn it.
Yeah.
The tragedy of love, but also the beauty of love, like their relationship forming in general. Like there's
That's
so many-
why I hate when people say Last of Us is just torture porn. Like, it's not. There's so many aspects. There's so much beauty to it too.
yeah, there's so
Like,
much
part
beauty.
two, especially.
Like Ellie is there as a character to give so much beauty and light to Joel. She is Joel's light, and Ellie.
And I hate when people say that about part two, especially because you have Ellie and Dina and that whole relationship, but you also have Lev, who's like the shining hope of humanity.
Yeah, I think people like just confuse like character morality to like just torture porn. Like they're not the same. They're two completely different things, and I feel like part of it is in fault to like something like Game of Thrones, honestly, to be honest, because there was like even I as a fan, like the show kind of did get very cynical in some places, so that kind of stigma stayed like with a lot of people. But like in this case with The Last of Us, it's not. It's
not
like,
at
that's
all.
not the case at all.
Yeah, it's the point of the people getting, I mean, to the benefit of the game, right? When people got so attached to these characters that they feel like it's torture when they get their heart ripped out from them in part two.
That's why the whole like controversies happen, because people are so attached to Joel.
Exactly,
Like,
which means the game's doing its thing. Like you don't get attached if it's such a
Exactly.
dark story. You get attached because there's hope. You get attached because there's a multitude of different lights and darknesses in your game. It's not all just, oh, this game is so dreary, dark, and I can't play part two. Part two is heavy, but it's just so much light and beauty in it too. It's perfectly balanced, in my opinion.
Yeah, but with all of that said, I'm gonna have to leave you guys a little bit early. So
That's fine. Yeah, we're about to wrap it up.
yeah, we're gonna be back probably next time for the monthly episodes. So I'm gonna be looking forward to that. And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, all of that good stuff at EDG or TEG. And I will see you on the next one. And Josh, don't stop showing Arena the Boast on the show, please.
we suffered enough.
Wow. Okay.
See you guys.
Peace out, man. Peace out.
See ya.
It's funny, as Edgar was talking about our next episode is going to be fucking Oscar Sunday. So we're going to be live during the Oscars.
Yeah, I hope they move it.
They're not going to move
because
it.
the Oscars aren't as big as Super Bowl.
It's not the Super Bowl. Yeah, it's like, fuck it. We'll go live.
It's just suck for us.
It's going to suck for us. How late do the Oscars go again? Like 11, 12?
No, not for you, yeah.
For me,
but it's like it starts at 5 here. It goes till like at least 9 or 8. Then
so 8 to 9 to 10. 9 to, yeah, it's about 8 to 12.
It's 3 hours, probably 4 hours realistically.
8 to like 11:30. So I'm watching it like 2.5 hours after the show, which sucks. But I know what happens.
We'll be. We know what happens, and we'll have a distraction also, so we don't.
Yeah,
have to,
I won't be like. There's nothing.
Twitter we blowing up about Oscar stuff. So
I'll be muting The Last of Us and everything related to it, anyways. So yeah, just for people who are like, hey, what's happening next for our next episode? We'll be live Oscar Sunday for like doing a 3-hour live stream.
We'll be live streaming, reacting to the ceremony.
The Oscars, because we're big movie fans. That's how we do it. And then we'll do the Last of Us episode a couple of days later.
Monday, Tuesday, I don't know, something.
Monday,
we'll
Tuesday. Figure it out. I might call off work Monday. Because, I've been watching the Oscars, then we're watching Last of Us. I'll be tired. I might call off work Monday. We'll see. Anyways, again, I love that scene so much. It's such a pivotal, climactic moment for Ellie and Joel's relationship. Them just going, Joel fearing their attachment, Ellie fearing the loss of that attachment. It's just so perfect. And then at the end, oh my God, one of my favorite scenes in the game. Also, like besides just that whole room scene where she mentioned Sarah and the push and pull that we just mentioned, one of my other favorite scenes is when Joel, Tommy, and Ellie are on their way leaving the cabin, and just like the game or the show yesterday, You get a beautiful sequence of Tommy, Joel, and Ellie on the horseback riding back to Jackson. It's so
they did that
they
here
did
with the montage.
with them leaving. They did with them leaving Jackson, but it's the same point. You get a beautiful sunset. You can tell that Joel's like pondering in the game.
We did the shot from the thumbnail that I used. It's gorgeous. The shot from behind of like the sunset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we get that shot perfect. And then in the game, they overlook Jackson and Joel's. I literally watched this last night. They're overlooking Jackson. Joel's like, you know what, Tommy, your wife scares me. Ellie, come on over here. And Tommy's like, what? Are you sure? He's like, yeah. I think like basically says like your wife scares me. This is what I want to do. And Ellie's like, here's your things, Tommy. Like you can tell she's so happy to be with Joel.
Yeah. And
Joel,
here,
that's Joel taking charge. Here, Joel.
She did the choice. And she chooses immediately.
Immediately. And
it's same effect, but like very like cool difference. Too.
Same effect, but again, these are different characters, and it works for like where Joel and Ellie are here. This is a more vulnerable Joel, so you can definitely tell.
This Ellie is a lot more harsher, is the word? A lot more grounded.
Grounded. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Because Joel was sitting there dicking around with the horse, just like waiting for them to show up.
Yeah.
And then when he gives her the choice, he knows what she's gonna say, but he doesn't want to say it himself. He doesn't want to say, "Ellie, I want you to be with me."
They're a lot more reserved.
Gives her the choice.
The game.
Exactly, and he knows what Ellie's gonna say, and she immediately says yes. It's just such a beautiful. I laughed so hard. It was it was a great moment. It just symbolizes their relationship. And then the episode had like 5-7 minutes left, filled with some, again, original scenes. They're practicing shooting. They're bonding more. Speaking of practicing shooting, when Tommy mentioned, like, I can shoot that thing from half a mile away, and Ellie's like, I want to use a sniper rifle. It's all teasing for the whole sniper rifle scene with Tommy and Ellie in part 2, when Ellie is getting taught how to use a sniper rifle by Tommy when they're overlooking the mountains, and Ellie's first using like a big sniper rifle, shooting those clickers half a mile away, as Tommy boasts in the show. Again, big teases for part 2 there again, and future seasons as well as Tommy and Ellie grow closer. But yeah, it was a great scene with them sniping those things away. We make it to the university, and I'm happy the way they adapted to this.
The monkeys. We get the monkeys still.
We get the monkeys. We get her learning what football is, what a mascot is.
Joel wanting to be a singer.
Wanted to be a singer, just like Troy Baker.
Yeah.
Is great. And again, the university level was so short. As soon as they walk in, we kind of all knew, like, there's no way they're going to do the whole clicker area, the bloater area. It was necessary for the game because, as Neil always talks about, you need an action sequence every level, every 10 minutes or so. You're going to need an action sequence in the game. Some kind of obstacle.
That's his basic gameplay,
basic gameplay. Yeah. And I like that level in Last of Us.
But the smart thing about here is that we're not getting as many action sequences, but we're getting a lot more. Like, I think the way they described it in the podcast, like, it's a lot more mental action,
emotional action,
yeah. Of like them developing and fleshing out these relationships.
For sure, I saw somebody complaining about that. One of my friends on Twitter.
Fuck off.
Oh Jesus. I mean, I get where people are coming from. I don't want to say F off, but like I'm on the opposite end.
I get it, but like we also don't need it. Like this show's different.
This is the drama, and the way when they do action, it hits. Just like in episode 4, when we get that car crash when he's shooting these people,
or 5 with the
action. Yeah, like it hits, and episode 8 and 9 are gonna have some action sequences of their own.
And the way they do it here, like the confrontation with like how Joel gets impaled is very different, but also like it fits the story more.
It fits the story way more.
It's not as cinematic. It's not as like it's a bit anticlimactic, but there's a point to that.
It's purposely anticlimactic.
Purposely, yeah.
Life in this world is just so surprising and coming out of nowhere, and he's in his adrenaline, just like in episode 1 where he's like punching the guy. He's in his adrenaline. He doesn't realize what happened. He doesn't realize he's been stabbed.
Yeah.
It's such a great realization. Also, before that, we get the map that we know now that they're in Utah. In the
And
game,
you did see the blue line to Catalina.
exactly. Oh wait, Catalina, like from part 2.
Mm-hmm. There's a blue
Whoa,
line
wait.
down in California.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, wow, that's a great catch. I
Just
did not
setting
realize that.
things up.
You're setting things up. Holy shit, it's a deep cut. What was I going to mention? Oh yeah, in the game, that's all via recording, but there's no recorders in the show.
Yeah.
That'd just be a bad thing to watch.
Just
so,
them listening to
like,
the recorder for 2 minutes.
yeah, so you can't really do that in the show. Yeah. Okay, Ellie, did you hear that? Okay, rewind it. No. They just look at a map. They see it's like, okay, they're in Utah. Cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we get the action sequence. And yeah, it's very short. We get a very good KO, just like from the game. And yeah, Joel's been stabbed. They don't make it very far. But yeah, this was our first introduction to David's group. This is David's people. They're gonna follow Ellie, and we're gonna see what happens to them in the weeks to come in episodes 7 and 8, mostly episode 8. But yeah, I'm excited. It leaves off where Ellie's like sobbing over Joel. I like how they mentioned, like in the podcast, selfishly, like, don't leave me here. I don't know what I can do without you. What am I going to do? Come on, wake up. Damn it, come on. It's such an emotional scene. Very good place to leave off. And we're in for some big Ellie moments in episode 7 and episode 8. So I can't wait to see what's next here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this series so far is so good, and it's just perfect the way it's at like adapting so many scenes shot for shot and doing so well, but also expanding so much.
They're expanding so much,
fleshing out every character, every dynamic, every environment, even.
Big time. I was so happy with. We talked about it in episodes 1 through 3. What they did with Tess was so cool and interesting. What they did with Maria here was so great. What they do with Henry and Sam is so great. Adding these original scenes, fleshing out dialogue from the game, all to perfection, I think. The pacing is very strong in this show. Performances are very strong. Production design, the way they're capturing these moments in the game is just phenomenal. It's so great. I think, it's between this and House of the Dragon for best production design in a drama next year at the Emmys, or this year at the Emmys. Don't they do production design, right, during the crafts?
I don't know the crafts.
It's like the Saturday before the Sunday of the Emmys, whatever, the day before the Emmys. But it's so good. Everything in full kudos to Craig and Neil in terms of the writing. The writing in this show, the dialogue,
it's so very good.
It's so sharp and
some of it's shot like or line for line, but some of it is fleshed out so well.
Yeah. I adore it so much. The writing has been peak.
Mm-hmm.
These relationships have been great. I'm having a great time week to week.
The music too, like we talked about earlier, just great work by Gustavo.
Yeah. Oh, how can we forget the show ends episode 6 with Never Let Me Down again. Play the same song from episode 2. The cover was by Craig's daughter.
Yeah.
Nepo Baby.
Even mentions that too.
Yeah, I know they mentioned it was hilarious. No, she was great here. Yeah, I think that's about it. I love the show. I love the game. I'm so happy.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that basically wraps it up for us. We'll be back for the finale in 3 weeks, which is what we talked about. Very interesting.
Yeah, we have a finale in a couple of weeks, so we're gonna do this episode 6 through 9 or 7 through 9.
Yeah,
in a couple of weeks.
So next week we have Left Behind. That's be a full episode. Then we assume episode 8 is doing deep into David.
Yeah,
and that arc of the game,
which I expect to have some original scenes because that level is pretty short. So them doing all.
If you see the gameplay, it's pretty short.
Yeah, exactly. So it's gonna be a fun one.
They'll probably flesh out David, the character, and his crew more. Obviously, we see Troy Baker as one of his goons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, also ahead for us, man. We have some great stuff coming up.
We do.
Mentioned The Last of Us finale recap, but we mentioned the Oscars as well.
Be a lot of the Oscars coverage. We'll probably do episodes soon talking about BAFTA wins and predictions.
Predictions are coming for that. Also,
we did take off January. We didn't say that, but we took off January because we've been busy and because I honestly did not watch much. The only new thing I watched in January besides TV was Women Talking.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I'm catching up this month, so we'll have a full conversation.
The world needs to know what I thought of Plane.
The world does need to know that, Evan.
Love Plane. Plane's actually really, really good.
There'll be a lot of stuff to talk about though, because now that we waited, because we have Poker Face, we have Last of Us, we have Megan, Icon, Ant-Man, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or fortunately, depending on who you ask.
No, not us. Did you like it?
I'll give it a 2.5. I'm in the middle.
Okay, yeah.
I definitely like Thor and Multiverse of Madness more. But anyways, we'll do our Ant-Man review as well. There's been some good things in January and February.
I'm watching Succession. I'll talk about that. I'm sure it'll be done.
Our March episode, dude, is going to be at the end of March or beginning of April.
That's to be rough. That'd be like 4 hours.
65. John Wick.
The Last of Us finale. We have all the movies. Literally a big movie release every week in March, which is crazy.
Dungeons and Dragons. I'm excited for that too.
That clip that came out, like as a D&D fan, I'm excited for that movie.
I haven't watched the clip yet. I'm trying to stay away from that, but the trailer has always been very fun.
It's so good.
So cool. I can't wait.
Dreaders of Game Night, of course, it'd be good.
Oh, we haven't even talked about Vox Machina season 2.
Yes, we'll definitely talk about that.
That's been great too. So look forward for us again. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment, everybody, if you lasted this.
And we'll get to our top 10 2022 eventually. Not sure when, but we still gotta do that.
For sure.
All right. Evan, where do people find you?
I'm on Twitter at HarrisEV9. As you mentioned, I'm watching tons of TV, tons of anime, playing lots of games. Pretty much it. Watching Last of Us. So if you want to hear my Last of Us thoughts the night of, you can just follow me at HarrisEV9. If you like anime, I'm watching a lot of anime this winter. Attack on Titan's coming out in just under 12 days, and I'm very excited. It's my favorite show. So there we go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you'd find me at Josh D. Woodbury on Twitter, talking about all kinds of things, doing a lot of Succession tweets because I'm freaking out. That's season 2 finale. Oh my god.
Crazy. One of the best final shots I've ever seen.
Yeah. And you'd follow this podcast at WHFG Podcast on Instagram and Twitter for announcements, updates. You'd follow our obviously our YouTube channel here and our podcast. What's the word? Podcast options? I don't know. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other ones. We've been updating every show. I think Edgar's been doing that. So if you want to listen to us, so watch. I did it. I'm not offended. That option's there. And what we said, we have a lot of stuff coming up. And that's basically it. Heartbreak feels good here.
Bye-bye.
Does it feel good because this show is challenging that?
All the time.
All right. Bye, everyone.